Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by Husky Harry, huggable homos who love film, to talk about something near and dear to our bear-loving, fur-loving, friend and admirer-loving hearts, that, of course, being the wonderful world of film. This week we have a big show. We are going to be talking about Marvel's newest outing into their, of course, superhero franchise. That, of course, being a Black Panther. Super stoked to get into that conversation. But before we do, I want to introduce you to my wonderful, phenomenal, amazing co-host, Jim Pugliafico is here with us. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, everyone. Thanks, Brad.
You are so welcome. And the delectable William Lintus is here with us, too. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, movie cubs and movie bears. So glad to be talking movies with you all today.
Indeed. And it looks like we got a ton of people jumping on already. Looks like a lot of excitement around Black Panther. Big hello to Bobby, Austin, Darren, everybody else in the live chat right now. Glad to have you guys on board with us. We want to talk about this movie really bad because I think it's going to be a great discussion. But we have one more piece of business. Guys, we have a very special guest in the house with us this week. Will, he's usually your stand-in when you're out of town going to conferences and doing other things. In fact, there's been this running joke that maybe you guys are the same person, but unless you're using holography to fool us, you're both in the same place at the same time. Steve from the Sacramento Movie Bears is with us on the show at the same time as Will. Steve, you're a real person. What do you know?
I am. Wakanda forever. Oh, wait a second. I'm actually doing my Steven Universe Gems salute. Wakanda forever.
There you
Wakanda
go.
forever.
There you go.
Love it.
But no.
Why not? Why not both? I would watch that episode of Steven Universe.
Well, actually, I do believe there's a common thread through Black Panther, Steven Universe, and Star Trek Discovery, which I can't wait to get into the weeds about.
What?
We'll discuss that later.
Ooh. Okay. So, you know those like fan theories that you see that go like crazy viral on the internet? Like, like, oh, all of the Pixar movies are connected. Or, oh, if you look at this, like you notice that it follows this through line, like with those like really deep dive fan theories. I think you might be on the verge of the next one. So we need to find a way to get whatever the Steven Universe Black Panther Discovery tie-in, that just needs to just set the internet on fire. We need to make people in chat, like that's your job, is to make sure that this spreads. It's up to you guys.
Hashtag it's all connected.
There you go. Well, definitely looking forward to taking that deep dive discovery. See what I did there? Mission with you, Steve, and hearing all of those thoughts. Man, there's like a ton of people jumping on for this. This is crazy. Hello to all of you new folks who have just joined us. Definitely feel free to say hello in the live chat. Sometimes it moves pretty quick. We don't always get to read every comment on air, but definitely we are reading what you say as we talk. So feel free to be part of the discussion. Ben Stark, who just moved to our neck of the woods just an hour and a half north of us. Ben, we definitely still need to get up there and see you, so we're looking forward to that. Guys, we have a lot to talk about tonight, and we're recording a little bit later than our normal showtime. So how do we feel about maybe skipping movie news and kind of giving ourselves a lot of room to run and just give Black Panther the attention it deserves? Are we good with jumping right into it?
Yeah, this movie basically is the movie news this week, right? So
Yeah.
so let's we kill two birds with one stone in this one.
All right, excellent. Well, then let me just say this for anyone who may be watching that has not yet seen Black Panther: worry not. Fret not. We're going to talk about Black Panther spoiler-free for probably 10 or 15 minutes or so. We'll give you our initial impressions without giving anything away and let you know whether we think it's worth seeing in theaters or not. Spoiler alert, that answer is probably yes. But we're going to talk about it anyway, and then we'll give you fair warning before we open the spoiler floodgate. So you'll be able to step away as needed. But, guys, here we go. Our discussion of Black Panther. All right, so Magic Mike Lovins in the chat, the guy that usually gets us to strip down to our underwears on the podcast, even though you can't see it on YouTube. Sorry, YouTube. Mike says he just got home from seeing Black Panther, so great timing. Mike, glad to have you with us as well. Jim, let's have you get us started, if you don't mind. Just kind of give us the basic setup of Black Panther. Was this worth seeing in theaters, waiting for rental? Did you like it? Did you not? What do you think?
Yeah, so let me see. I'll start at the top there and just talk a little bit about the movie. This, I think we're going to look back. I think we kind of knew going into it that this was going to be like a milestone film in the MCU. And I believe that it's definitely going to be for several reasons, right? Right off the top, it's making huge noise critically. It's still in the high 90s, I think, percent on Rotten Tomatoes critic score. And also has a high audience score. Box office wise, I think it had just shy of a $200 million opening weekend, which is fucking phenomenal. And there are several other reasons why this is. I mean, this is, in the MCU, this is a milestone film because this is, the first time that we're going to see, kind of not the first African-American superhero represented in the MCU, but the first time one has taken front and center as the lead character, right? So that's very exciting. So let me kind of go through what this movie really is. So we catch up with our guy, T'Challa, right? T'Challa? Am I saying this right, first of all?
T'Challa, yes.
T'Challa. Also known as the Black Panther, who we first saw, and by the way, minor spoilers coming up for Captain America Civil War. If you haven't seen Captain America Civil War, we're going to talk about Black Panther because that's the first time we saw him appear in the MCU, if I'm not mistaken. In this movie, he aspires to rise to his dad's vacated throne as the king of the isolated but technologically advanced African nation of Wakanda. But his claim is challenged by a vengeful outsider who was a childhood victim of T'Challa's father's mistake. So there you go. That's kind of the setup for the movie. This movie is written by Ryan Coogler, directed by Ryan Coogler, written by him and a few other contributing writers. We know Ryan Coogler first came on the scene. I think we first noticed him with a small kind of indie movie called Fruitvale Station. That we really loved, also starring at least one of the stars in this movie. Michael B. Jordan was also his kind of coming out party. This movie has like a dream amazing cast. It's got Chadwick Boseman, who we first saw him star in the movie 42, which was Jackie Robinson baseball biopic. Then he was played in Get On Up as James Brown in that biopic. Really great performances there. You kind of stand up and take notice of this guy. But in those movies, he's kind of playing characters that historical characters, right? So he's kind of, and certainly in the James Brown case, maybe more of a kind of impressionistic performance, but still great nonetheless. And then we mentioned Michael B. Jordan from The Wire, Fruitvale Station, Fantastic Four. We won't dwell on that one too much. And then Creed, which I think was one of the best movies from, was that 2015, guys? 2015,
whatever year it was,
16?
it was fucking amazing.
Yeah,
it was fucking.
And by the way, Creed 2 is in the works, so
excellent.
Get ready for that one. Another one, Lupita Nyong'o, right?
Oh my God. I want to marry her now.
12 Years a Slave. She's in the Star Wars trilogy films as Maz Kanata. Daniel Kaluuya, someone we really are standing up and taking notice of this year from Get Out. He was also in Sicario, by the way. I love this guy. I want to see him in a lot more stuff. Letitia Wright, Sterling Brown from This Is Us. If you guys have watched any any of that series, This Is Us. He's pretty amazing on that. I didn't even know he was in this movie until I saw him on the screen. I'm like, oh my God, that's the guy.
It's Randall.
It's Randall. It's Randall from pretty awesome. Forrest Whitaker, Andy Serkis, Martin Freeman, and I'm still going, right? These are all top names you're going to see in this movie. I really enjoyed this movie. It still very much at its core, kind of what you'd expect out of an MCU. It didn't bust the mold in terms of story. It didn't bust the mold too much. It's still, bad guy, good guy. Although there are some, this one feels kind of more personally, and the kind of the conflict feels a lot more personally and socially driven than some big bad wanting to take over the universe, and the good guys have to come and defeat him, right? This is not that kind of movie. It has some stakes that feel emotional and real and feel more grounded, even for a superhero movie. So I really enjoyed that about this movie. It's got that going for it. As far as a recommendation, people absolutely should see this. There are some nits and knocks that we'll get into here and there that I have with it, but it's still very good. I think a top tier addition to the MCU. I don't know if some people are claiming it's the best one, and that may be true for some people. I don't know. I'm it's in probably the top 5 for me of MCU movies. So, yeah. So I'm just gonna say one thing. Like, we talked about this movie kind of featuring a superhero front and center who's an African-American character. And it feels good to know that there may be a few young like African-American kids who may have grown up watching these MCU movies and always asking why none of the main guys or superheroes were the same as me. You know what I mean? And this movie has that for kids who come to this movie. So there's I'm not saying that those kids weren't part of the MCU audience, because I'm sure they were, but now this gives them kind of a way to feel like they belong. You know what I mean? They belong in this universe. So good on the movie for that. Still a great superhero action movie. It's got a lot of things going for it. The cast, the acting, I think is great. Yeah, I want to hear what you guys think.
So big recommend from Jim, which says a lot, Jim, given your non-proclivity for superhero movies. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
I have to focus on the things that make it stand apart. And this movie had enough of those for me to let me like it.
Yeah. Well, good. That's great. Well, let's go to Steve next. Steve, I know you were really excited to come on and talk about this movie. But very anxious in a good way to hear what you think here, because you kind of hold your cards close to the vest sometimes. So what were your non-spoiler thoughts on Black Panther?
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, I think it should come as a surprise to no one that as a young comic book geek, as in my younger days, I love Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all that, but to see myself in a comic, there were a few choices: Black Panther, Black Lightning, Power Man, and those are always exciting characters because they were a bit reflective. You could again, you could see yourself. So everyone was waiting with bated breath for this movie to come out, and one of the things that struck me right away just about the groundswell for this movie is it reminded me in some ways of Sex and the City, the Sex and the City movie, and I mean that in this way. That became a phenomenon in some ways by word of mouth. Women got together with their girlfriends, made a night of it. Everyone went out for Cosmos and hit the movie, and then the box office went through the roof. In this case, it sort of became the same thing with Black Panther. I can't tell you the number of invitations I got to see this movie or to see it with a group. Now, Disney's really good at marketing, I would doubt it was as exactly as grassroots as Sex and the City was. So I was actually impressed by how well Disney marketed this movie to the community without it being overbearing or crossing any particular lines. I think they really did a fantastic job. I do think their hands were in it, but I think did a fantastic job of getting people in the community interested in making it an event. And I think the box office numbers show that. It also doesn't hurt that it was just a dang good movie. And I think that not only was it a good movie, it was a good superhero movie. I think it was a good movie in general for a couple of reasons. One, it's hard to go wrong when you have Angela Bassett and Forrest Whitaker and Michael B. Jordan in your cast. I used to joke that this was the cast of every black actor that has ever had an award nomination. It is a dream cast. Not to mention somewhat of a dream director, even though Ryan Coogler kind of has only 2 movies under his belt, but they're incredibly good movies. Fruitvale Station, as well as of course Creed, the Rocky reboot. And I think that's important for a couple of reasons, and some we'll get into in terms of how it changes a movie for the better when there are people of color not just in front of the camera but also behind the camera, and how that affects the storytelling. But also because what I love and I hate about Marvel/Disney films is they are so good at what they do. They have it down to a science. They know how to produce a marketable good movie, and we've often seen Marvel Studios take an up-and-coming director and just wedge him into their system. And where this director's original movies might have been interesting or different at a certain point of view, when Disney's writing the checks, you have an obligation to make a certain movie, and they will keep you to that. Even to the point where people get fired, like on Ant-Man and some of the Star Wars movies, because they just couldn't come together artistically. What struck me about Black Panther, enjoying the performances of amazing actors, seeing the magic of Industrial Light and Magic make Wakanda a beautiful place. The same costume designer, I believe, from Selma, did some, oh my God, costuming in this movie. But I thought throughout all that I could still hear Ryan Coogler's voice in the direction in a way that stood out for me from other good Marvel movies. I think this movie was just as good, but very distinct in a number of ways, starting with getting someone like Coogler to write and direct, and either giving him enough room to operate, or he himself finding a way to operate within the lanes of a mega $1 million Marvel superhero movie. So that was cool. And I think that added to what Disney already does well, just put the movie over the top, making it not just a good superhero movie, but a good movie we're seeing.
So big recommend from you too, it sounds like.
Sounds like you kind of liked it.
Take your mother. Take the whole family to go see it.
All right. Well, we're 2 big recommends so far. Will, how about you? Where do you come in here?
Yeah, this is going to be a 3rd big recommend from me. I think that this particular film had a lot of things that it had to balance on its plate before you even walked into the theater, before you saw a frame of it, because there is this kind of this meta story to it of this is the first, it's not the first black superhero that we've seen, but it's the first that's been this prominent and as part of this particular universe and as part of this sort of new age of superhero movies. And so because of that, that was always going to be a big part of the conversation. And at the same time, it's also a blockbuster entertainment product that is the 24th film in the franchise, or however many deep we are. Yeah. I pulled that number out of my ass. I could be wrong. But it's however many films deep into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it also has to be tonally resonant with the stories that they've both told in the past and also with the ones that they are building towards with the Infinity War stuff. So that's a lot of plates to keep spinning. And I think that where this film really succeeds is in having Ryan Coogler as the director and as one of the main people on the script, because Coogler, and we've seen it with Creed and we've seen it with Fruitvale Station, I feel like he's the perfect director for a film that needs to be both an entertainment product while also being socially conscious. He pulls that off amazingly here, because, like Steve, you mentioned this perfectly. His voice is all the way through this while not overpowering kind of the source material. Part of that is supported by an amazing group of actors and people sort of behind the camera. Of course, you mentioned all of the big actors. I won't go through all of them again, just because every single one of them is worth mentioning, and we will talk about them in spoilers. But for me, the standouts were actually the actresses. There are 4 female. I mean, there's a lot of females in this, and that's one of the strengths of it. But there are 4 sort of female leads, who all put in solid work. Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia, Danae Gurira as General Okoye, Letitia Wright as Shuri, who I think I keep going back and forth between whether Okoye or Shuri were my favorite, and I feel like I've landed on Shuri. I feel like what Letitia Wright did with that character was she gave me energy, and she gave me like all of like kind of the fierceness that you would want from her, especially when she gets to some of like the, the action scenes, because this is an action movie. But I loved that she was a progressive, like she was a science first character. And if we're talking about the socially conscious elements, like I think it's awesome for people to see, for Black people, like Black kids who are like looking at this and saying, I want to see myself represented on screen, to be able to not just see like, buff dude kicking ass, although buff dude did kick some ass and looked kind of good doing it, but also to see themselves reflected through kind of an array of different characters and personality types, all of which are through this like progressive Afrofuturistic lens. I loved all of that. So Letitia Wright was great. You may have also seen her in Black Mirror. She was in the Black Museum episode. Nailed it there. Awesome. And of course, the 4th there being Angela Bassett, also amazing here. So I love the women in this. And one other woman that I think deserves a lot of praise for what she brings to this film is Ruth Carter. You mentioned her, Steve. She is the kind of the head of the costume department. And it's always hard to think about superhero movies in terms of what type of Oscar or what type of awards buzz they might get kind of for the end of the year. We thought about Logan as like maybe this weird dark horse, like best picture potential candidate. And it didn't make it. It did not make it into that into that category, though it did make it into the writing category. And we've seen in the past some of these get nominated for like special effects, or maybe even the worst movie of 2016 picks up an Oscar for the costume for the makeup on in Suicide Squad. These are things that have happened for superhero movies. I feel like the easiest lock bet that I could pick for this movie, and it may have more legs than this, it's just too early to tell, honestly, but I think you can lock this one down right now for a costuming Oscar. The costume work in this film is inspired. And I was doing a little bit of research on it and this is huge for me because I'm not the type of person who normally gives too much of a shit about the costuming in a movie. Like, if it looks good, then I'm transported enough that I'm overlooking Matt and looking at the performances and the other things as well. So good costuming usually should be invisible to me. But I just kept finding myself transfixed. And one of the things that I was reading that Ruth Carter did was she actually took everything that you see in this movie is inspired by different predominantly South African attire, and it's kind of a mix match of different cultures blended together to make the Wakandan culture. And there's like these neat little things where you can see like like the Zulu headdress that's used that's sort of used and inspires the headdress that the Angela Bassett character wears. And there's a character with the lip plating. Which is part of like kind of Mercy and Surma lip plate. And I didn't know anything about that before this. Like this was a definite weak spot for me. And so I found that by being so interested in this costuming and specifically why the decisions were made, because they were good decisions, I found myself actually walking out of this like learning a lot too. And like And that's a cool feeling for me. Just like, I know more than I did before. This is a great movie. I don't know if it's like my #1 Marvel movie of all time, if it's in my top 3. Right now, I feel like it's like a strong candidate for like my top 3 or so. It's very, very soon after having seen it. And so I don't feel like I've had it. Like, I need to let it set and settle with me a little bit more before I make any like very hyperbolic statements. But if someone were to say to me, this is the best Marvel movie because of the meta elements, because of the representation, I totally get that. And if someone wants to say that because of the performances and the direction and the character beats and all of those things, I also buy that too, because this film, like I said, had 2 plates that it really needed to spin: entertainment and socially conscious. And it does both of those things, I think, pretty damn well. So this is a strong, hearty recommendation from me. If you haven't seen it already, I'm surprised, because I think most people have. There's still a few people that have like kind of like, you know, like let the first weekend like go and kind of catch it on the second weekend. And I totally get that. But I think a lot of people have seen this. The box office numbers reflect that. But if you haven't, go see it. It's really fucking good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 3 super strong recommends. Steve, did you have a response? Go for it.
Yeah, lip plate guy got a lot of screen time. I was always tired of seeing him. I just know on the costuming. One of the things I read about costuming that just stuck with me is her use of triangles, and this was something she took from a particular tribe, particular culture. And when I saw the movie the second time, that particularly stood out to me is you can see that motif various places. But yeah, just hand her just put her on the Oscar list now.
Well, I think it's the only lock I can call right now. Yeah.
It's also interesting too from a costuming perspective, and I'm not going to take too much time because I know we want to get to spoilers and time is limited. But you know, you have this idea that these different peoples have come together to make up Wakanda, right? And so I think that's reflected in a lot of the costuming. We see a lot of different types of dress represented there, and it's kind of neat, like especially in scenes like in a marketplace or something where everyone's kind of mixed together. It's not like one predominant style of anything. Like you see a little bit of everything, and it makes for a really cool visual on screen when it's all blended together like that, which I think in a way enhances too some of the social message, and we can talk about that a little bit. But I'll just go out and say this was a big, huge win for me as well. I enjoyed this movie quite a lot. Visually, very, very stunning. I want a Black Panther necklace now, whether it's for me or one of the cats, babe. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. Maybe they'll each get a different, you know, different style of necklace. But this was a really good film. I mean, I have some issues with it. I think some of the plot is a little derivative. I got into some trouble today on Facebook, so I may not delve too deeply into that. But I think it follows some predictable story beats. But I think the way that it executes on these things is very, very smart and very exciting. It takes some things that, yes, maybe you have an idea of how things are going to shake out. The movie's called Black Panther, you know, for a reason. He's obviously the titular character, but it puts him in some interesting situations that I appreciated, and I liked seeing the journey, even if maybe we could guess where the destination was going. I think that journey was a good one, and I enjoyed that ride immensely. So I want to get into spoilers. I feel like that's where the meat and potatoes of our discussion are going to be. I know we have a couple people in the live chat, like Austin Glenn, who actually have not seen the movie yet. So Austin and anyone else who maybe doesn't want to be spoiled, this is the part of the show where I awkwardly ramble so that you can turn the volume down, come on back for plugs at the end. If you're listening on digital tape delay, use the time index in the show notes to skip ahead as needed. But spoilers are officially fair game by the time I end this sentence. So Bobby Miller, I know you haven't seen it as well. Go ahead, step away. We'll see you next time, we hope. Guys, enough rambling. We're gonna take the lid off this thing. Spoilers, totally fine. Where do you want to start?
I tell you what, we talked about costumes. We have to talk about rhinoceros costumes, right? I mean, those that like That was the one crowning achievement for the costume director in this movie, was getting them outfitted with obviously that's all CGI. But
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was thinking, like, what the fuck did I miss? Like, I remember the CGI rhinos, but the guys that were wearing them just had more of like the blankets on. And
no, they were all like decked out in armored costumes and stuff at the end.
They're basically the rhino from Amazing Spider-Man 2.
That's pretty much true.
Yeah.
Pretty much good. And there's a comment about costuming I might want to come back to around later, and that is with particular regard to M'Baku. And first of all, can we just get it out of the way that all the soldiers from the White Gorilla cult are the hottest men in the movie?
Oh,
let's establish that right now.
Christmas.
I tend towards like a certain frame of guy, and these guys are less big around the middle than the type of guy I'm normally drawn to. But oh my gosh, like it felt like my own private screening of like 50 Shades of Grey. Like, basement was a bit flooded.
Did you set your own private seating, Will?
Own private screening. Like I got to experience like that whole just like hot and bothered that everyone else got to experience.
They are my new gym inspiration. And I'll tell you about a quick aside from my Valentine's Day story. We saved Valentine's Day for Thursday, which was the premiere date of Black Panther, because my partner Kevin is not really into the whole flowers and restaurant thing. I am. So we went to a very nice restaurant for dinner that happened to be across the street from the IMAX, which was showing Black Panther, which, knowing my partner's taste in men, I just describe it as 2 hours of porn for Kevin. So I got him worked up enough that it was a win-win for everybody.
That's one way to get him in.
And you know what? And I don't want to. We're probably jumping around a bit, but actually, I'm intrigued by the costuming of M'Baku for a couple of reasons, especially the more I read about the costuming and design of this movie, because dealing with the leader of what is never said in the movie, but what is known by all readers is the White Gorilla cult, was a particularly sensitive area for the costumer and the producers. People know from reading the comic books that character is known as the man ape.
Yes,
and is often depicted in the comic books as half like a hybrid, half man, half ape, or in a gorilla costume, or that sort of thing. But I think any reasonable person would realize that depicting a black man as a gorilla or ape or monkey is problematic, to say the least. Yet this is an important historic Black Panther character, sometimes foe, sometimes friend, and you can't you really don't want to leave him out of the story or out of that universe. So, and again, to return to the point of why it sometimes makes a difference to have people of color not just in front of the camera but also behind the camera, they found a way to thread that needle. They didn't try to make him something different. You can see the signs, you can see the iconography, you can see when you go to his lair, the white gorilla holding up his basically headquarters. Though never in the movie, and I listened to this the second time I watched it, do they ever mention the cult of the white gorilla or his name as Man-Ape. But those beats are still there. Some of the motifs are still there. Even his monkey mask when he's in the first initial challenge fight is there, but subtle. His costuming shows a bit of that history of the character there, but subtly, without making it a caricature. And just threading that needle with that one character is a mark of the genius of not just the writers but the costume designer to kind of get those points across.
Well, they definitely threaded that needle, and that was a super fine line for them to walk. I did not know, Steve, about the comics and the Man-Ape character or white gorilla. So when these guys showed up on the screen, I'm squirming a little bit because I'm like, oh God, this feels a little bit uncomfortable for me. I don't know what to think of this. This seems kind of wrong that they would have these characters in this movie. And even later in the movie, when they go to them to ask them for help against Killmonger's army, and they have that woofing gorilla like sound that they're like, and I'm like, geez, that makes me even more uncomfortable. But hey, they walked it. I haven't, obviously it worked in the movie, I think, but I think it was a brave choice to leave that in, I have to say.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Steve. And I think that this is part of the proof that we're probably secretly alternate dimension twins of one another, because this was the point that I was most excited to bring up during spoilers. So I'm glad you popped the top on it, because I feel like this is the strongest example for me of walking the line in a way that is both respectful of the current climate while also respectful of the source material. Because, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is incredibly problematic to portray a person of color as a man in a monkey suit in 2018. It's problematic to do that anytime, but bear with me. They were able to, as a comic book fan, I was able to very quickly and immediately recognize who this character was, what their significance was, and to see a lot of the kind of the costuming coding without some of the more problematic racial coding coming across in that same way. And that's impressive as hell, because I think we see too often in superhero movies, this is me speaking as a comic book fan now, where we see filmmakers who throw out and discard all of the source material to the point where it almost feels disrespectful of the material they're trying to make the film about. And there's reasons why you would do that. You want to make a more streamlined product. You don't really care about these costuming and you want something more practical. There's a lot of reasons why you might do that. But they walk the line so respectfully on all lines here. And we're able to not only do that and let me go I'm a comic book fan and I like it. I'm a big SJW nerd, I'm allowed to like it for these reasons too. But at the same time, they gave me some delicious eye candy, and they gave me a character who was important to the story, who was important to helping to flesh out kind of what the world of Wakanda is like, and who helped give me some fun action beats. There were a lot of things that they were able to balance with this character, and I applaud the hell out of them for doing it.
Yeah, you almost think that if they had, we're applauding them now for the choices they made in walking that line, and I 100% agree. But something tells me that we also would have applauded the choice if they had left them out, because, if someone had told you when they were starting the movie that they were going to put this in, you would have been like, maybe we shouldn't do that. But to be brave enough to make that choice and do it smartly is a feather in the movie's cap.
And also, I definitely want to tip a hat to Winston Duke, the actor playing M'Baku, because if he had been the Yellow Sparrow, he was a funny character. He was a good actor. He was charismatic. Just besides being incredibly hot, he held the screen. He was interesting. Reading his IMDb real quick, we may see him again, and I look forward to it.
I want to bring up a couple of things. One, my biggest issue with the movie was the same issue I have with a lot of movies, especially in the action superhero genre, of you have this scene where about halfway through the movie where T'Challa is challenged by Killmonger for the throne, right? And they battle. T'Challa seemingly gets defeated, goes over the waterfall. He's going to be dead, right? No. Because you know what kind of movie it is. This did not mean anything. They really, first of all, they named it after the movie after this guy. He's not going away. Why are you doing this? Why are you, was there a special story beat they had to hit there? From the comics that they had to do this? Because I don't think there was anybody in the movie theater who thought the guy was dead. It was just a matter of when he was going to come back.
Do you think that they were doing it to like fool the audience because I don't think that's their intention. Like, I mean,
why would you do it?
The movie is called Black Panther, so they're not going to kill Black Panther halfway through,
right?
Because that would
so why fake that you're doing it?
So you're doing it not to trick the audience, because the audience isn't going to be tricked. That's not the intention here. The thing here is to separate the character from and at least, from my perspective, the writers could have whatever reason they want, but you're separating the character from the story. You're doing a fall from grace story, so he has a chance to rise back up. It's why you break Batman's back over Bane's knee, and spoilers for Batman comics, not because you think Batman's gone forever, but because the struggle of him kind of getting back up and rising is important. If Black Panther stayed in control this whole time and had a literal army behind him the entire time, it's not as satisfying as seeing him having to gain power, lose power, and then reclaim power. So the hero's journey.
I totally agree with you there. I think, Jim, what you're getting at, though, is like, this movie almost sets up a reveal because he disappears for a large part of it. It's not like we see him floating down the river. It's not like 15 minutes later we cut to someone pulling him out of the river and giving him to M'Baku. Like, he's just gone, and then they show up, and he's like, oh, come with me. I have to show you something. And you're like, oh, here it is. This is what we're waiting for. Of course that's what it is. So I think you can still have kind of the same setup. And yes, I want to see that rise back to grace. I want to see him like reclaim his power and take his throne. But Jim, to your point, I think the stakes just aren't there for me. I'm like, if he goes over the waterfall, he'll be back. If he gets stabbed through the chest, he'll be back. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's a cool setup for the story, but I just feel like that revealed, I don't know.
So I think what we're saying is we did it for plot reasons. I mean, there's no other reason than to do it.
Well, that's why you do anything in a story, though, right?
Well, no, I mean, you do it for character reasons, and you do it to build tension in the story. There was no tension in that move at all. Like, it's just we got to do it because we got to do it. Like, it's what the story requires, so we do it. I don't know. It's a nit, maybe. But it's like, why bother going through all that drama of the battle when it all doesn't mean anything, really?
Jim, I'm not the first to say this. Has been said many, many times. The only people that ever stay dead in comic books are Peter Parker's uncle and Bruce Wayne's parents.
Okay.
Everyone else is good.
And even those
so far, yeah.
And it's not about it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, because, especially with the titular character, where it's going eventually. Where any superhero movie is going eventually. It's about the hurdles to get there. How is he going to get there? What are going to be his obstacles? How is he going to get through it? But I do agree with you in that with the title character himself, there's very little stakes. We know he's going to survive. We know he's going to be in Infinity Wars in about 20 minutes. So the actual stakes for him are not that huge.
I think there's ways you could do it without saying, "Oh, he's going to die," like falling off this waterfall. There's ways you can have that fall from grace dramatically, that have dramatic tension and character tension, without the way they do it. But that's
if you'll let me kind of steer this a little bit. I think because there was such little stake with the title character Black Panther, it accentuated for me the stakes in particularly four other people, the female characters in that movie. They had huge stakes, and I know, but Will was going to get this a little bit earlier, but we've got to talk about the women in this movie.
Yeah,
Can I yas a little bit?
That was the way more interesting part to me. Like, I was almost kind of glad that Black Panther was gone from the movie for a while, because we get this really great story of these women having to sort of come to the rescue, right? They're desperate. You've got the general who has to remain true to the throne, even though she hates the guy that has like manipulated things into taking it. You got some really great character drama between, her staying behind and being loyal and the others who left. Obviously, you've got this journey to go. They think they're going to give the herb, the heart-shaped flower to this opposing force. And lo and behold, guess what? Black Panther is really still there. And that's what I meant earlier. It's like, you know, yeah, we kind of know the destination. We know probably where we're going to end up. But for me, it was kind of interesting to see the journey to get to those points.
Absolutely. Those were the stakes that I think were the most important to me, because for me, you have to look within every single genre film has its tropes, and tropes isn't a bad word. You know, it's like, it's the things that make up the genre. That's how we're able to recognize like a sci-fi movie from a romantic comedy, from like a full of testosterone action film. You know, every film has its threading. And with these types of films, you know, with the superhero movie, like kind of a rated PG-13 mass audience thing, you know, they're not going to be mowing through characters left and right, just like they're not going to be doing that in, like, you know, a lot of like these types of films. So the stakes instead aren't necessarily on who lives and who dies, but instead of what happens to the characters. So for example, there's two big stakes for me in this. What happens, Brad, you mentioned it, you know, what happens to the female characters when they have to make some of these tough decisions, you know? They are basically giving away all of this power to a person that they don't know that they can trust. But even more so, there's a lot of huge stakes for a character we haven't talked about at all here, and that's Wakanda as a whole. Because the power shift that happens here, where we basically have this isolationist country that has thrived because it's kept itself safe and kept itself secluded, is now in this tumultuous moment where not only are they going to reveal themselves to the world, but they're going to do so through revolution and warfare. And some of it you can kind of justify too, because that's the strength of the script. Like, they make the Killmonger's character, like, you know, make just enough sense that you, like, I had some friends walk out of it and say, I'm kind of rooting for him. But I what I loved so much is, I think that's where the stakes really were for me. Not necessarily does T'Challa live or die, does he become king or not, but like, what's going to happen to Wakanda? Because while T'Challa is out of power, there is a lot of there's a lot of stuff that can be dramatically fucked up. There's some genies that can be let out of bottles that, you know, that will never be stuffed back in. And that was what I was more worried about than who would show up in the third act.
I definitely want to talk about the one, but if you indulge me for a second, I kind of want to talk about the points of view of Killmonger versus T'Challa versus his girlfriend Nakia versus the white gorilla tribe, because what's something struck me just philosophically about this movie in terms of the burden. The central argument of this movie had to do with the burden of Wakanda, which I think in some ways can be translated to the burden of the filmmaker. And I say that in this respect. To me, the central thesis of this movie and the central argument of this movie was, if there were a magical African kingdom that had all the science, technology, and resources of the world, what would be their responsibility to the rest of the world, be their descendants of Africa or just the world in general? You know, to all the black folks all over the world. Do they save them? Do they rescue them? Do they arm them? And I think with Black Panther, with T'Challa, his point of view was, you know, I can't save everybody. I can only save us, and that's where his argument for isolation. Whereas M'Baku, the white gorilla cult, was even further in terms of, not only should we be isolated, we should give up all this technology altogether and live more naturalistically, because this is all corrupt. To Nakia, T'Challa's girlfriend, who said, "No, we have so much, we should share. You know, we should be humanitarians. We should educate and help the world." Then kind of playing on that, but to a further extent, was Eric Killmonger, who some people kind of said maybe he's not all wrong, but what he wanted to do was basically find black people or African descendants throughout the world and arm them for revolution.
For the revolution, yeah.
Basically turning into helping all of our people, to making all of our people superior and rulers of the world, and he replaced black with white. He's basically giving an alt-right white nationalist argument to taking over the world, and that's what turned his argument from a good one to a bad one. That's what made him the enemy. So I think to me the thesis of the movie, the grand philosophical point was, if there were this kingdom with all these resources, what is their responsibility to the rest of the world, and how should you handle that? And I think you can actually translate that a bit to the filmmakers who Ryan Coogler gets $200 million to make the first big budget black comic book hero movie. What is his responsibility? How much does he? Who does he have to speak for and speak to? Can he just tell a straight superhero movie, or does he have to, in some ways, comment on modern life of most Black Americans, on a modern perspective and current situations and politics and philosophy in the world at large? Does he have to do all that, or can he just tell a straight superhero movie? And I'm sure he struggled with that, and I think we see bits and pieces of that, how he balanced the two. So I just when I get all big headed and philosophical about this movie, I thought about the challenges of Wakanda having everything in their response to the world, and also how it relates to the filmmaker himself, and what can he do and what does he have to do.
Steve, I haven't heard that take before, and in terms of the kind of the Ryan Coogler analogy, and thanks for that, because I'm now thinking about this film in a way that I was not thinking about before, because there's obviously the parallels between a lot of the things that are even happening in the U.S. right now, kind of the socio-political stuff, right? There's even a line about, and I'm going to misquote it, but it's something about it's better to build a bridge than to build a wall. And you know why that line was put there. I mean, you don't reference walls in 2017, 2018, unless you're referencing the person who I didn't celebrate today. There's one element, I'm very pro this movie, and that, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of reasons why. There was one sort of thing that stuck in my craw about it, aside from any minor quibbles, and I think the minor quibbles, there were a couple of CGI rubber banding things that did not look as good as they could have, that looked especially the final fight sequence, the CGI looked a little wonky, minor pacing issues, but it's all whatever stuff. But one thing that did concern me a little bit is, while this story draws from a lot of the history of Black Panther, a character with 50 years of history at this point, a lot of it is pulling, at least in terms of tone, from the most recent Black Panther comic series, which is written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's actually kind of, before writing comic books, before writing this Black Panther comic, starting at a year and a half, 2 years ago, his claim to fame was doing a lot more of online, kind of critical essays and stuff like that. And obviously transitioning into screenwriting is going quite well here with Black Panther and with working with the movie. But one of the things that's most prominent in that story, two of the members of the Guard, the Dora Milaje, if I'm pronouncing that right, it's a lesbian couple. It is a lesbian couple, one of which appears in the movie, the character Ayo, who was the other guard that was always hanging around, and one of which is a character named Anika, who did not appear in the movie. And they cut Anika out, and they basically sort of made the Okoye character, the Denai Guerrera's character, sort of fill some of those roles. And instead of allowing them to have a lesbian relationship, they kind of straight-washed the movie. They did not do anything with Ayo's sexuality, and instead made sure that Okoye had the relationship with the Kaluuya character. And part of me feels that it's unfair for me to feel a little bit bummed by this, because they're already balancing a lot of things. This is a movie that had, again, all of those things that we talked about before in terms of its significance with the Black community, while also doing a lot for female characters too. Those are already two major, massive steps forward. And so part of me is sort of well, there's already so many things, I can understand why this one thing didn't get included. But the other part of me is also as a queer male, a lot of the representation that we see from the LGBT side of things gets relegated to the side. We got art house movies on lock, but when it comes to blockbuster representation, it's not often there. And so if I'm giving this film a knock anywhere, I wish they had done something there. I understand why they didn't, and And so I'm not like, you know, like casting this, like I'm not too upset with the film about it, but I really wish I had seen that. I think that that could have been the thing that, like, if I'm sort of debating what my top 3 Marvel movies are, if they had just gone forward with that, this would have been a #1 with a bullet for me.
Hey, well, Will, can you remind me who are the lesbian characters in the comic book? This is a hard time with all the African names.
Yeah. The characters
I like to read more about them.
The characters are Ayo, Ayo, and Anika, Aneka. And they both kind of serve in and around the Dora Milaje, like the guards. And so it's great because you see, like, these are what I love so much about it in the comics is this is a set of powerful Black women. Like, you know, these women like kick ass, and they're also involved in a very, especially once it gets going, kind of an unapologetic lesbian relationship. And being able to see that represented in a medium that I love was great. I wish I could have seen it represented in another medium that I love as well.
Yeah, and we talked about the badass, powerful women in Wakanda as kind of the leader of the guard, but you got to wonder why there isn't a woman leader yet of Wakanda. They still seem not at the level in terms of ruling as the dudes. So what's up with that?
Well, Jim, you know who their queen is, don't you? Currently in the comic books.
No.
And I mostly because I've been reading up on it lately, but and William, tell me if this is not current or not. But T'Challa eventually marries Storm, and she becomes the queen of Wakanda.
Really?
Okay.
She did, but then they sort of like, so around like 2003 or so in the comics, one of the writers came along and he was interested in writing Black Panther stuff, but he was not interested in a lot of the other supporting cast characters. And so I don't know if this was good or if it was bad, and I struggle with it myself. Like, he was just like, well, fuck it, I'm writing it now. Storm's Black. She's now they're in love and now they're getting married. Like, it was like that. Like, just kind of came out of nowhere.
And she's African too.
Absolutely. You know, and she is she's an African goddess, like literally an African goddess. So all of that is cool. Gosh, I'm trying to figure out where they're at now because they then separated, and I think we're trying to get it annulled, and I don't know if they did or not, just because
and didn't that also tie into a storyline where the sister became a female Black Panther and she was out there kicking ass?
So Shuri is less of a, like, in the comics she's still like a badass, like strategic, smart person, but she's also a lot better of a hand-to-hand combatant. Like, she's right up there with T'Challa. So she actually becomes Black Panther for a bit, and it's sort of just like, it's almost like gender swapped Black Panther because her costume just looks like T'Challa but with boobs. So I actually like the movie Shuri better because I feel like they really found some cool personality beats that made her a little more unique in this world. Like, I love that she was the nerd, but she wasn't like, kind of like what we think of with the nerd, just sort of like, pushing the glasses and kind of like standing in the background. Like, she embraced her intelligence and she embraced kind of her own uniqueness within this culture. She both veered into tradition while also bucking it. I thought that was kind of cool to watch.
So speaking of future leaders, I gotta ask, all of the heart-shaped herbs have been burned. What are they gonna do when it's time for a new king or a new Black Panther? Is there like a secret greenhouse somewhere that we just didn't know about?
Brad, nothing dies in superhero movies, even heart-shaped herbs.
This is actually a question. I want to kick this over to Steve because I'm wondering if you can tie the resurgence of the heart-shaped herb into your Steven Universe Black Panther Star Trek Discovery fan theory.
Obviously they're part of the mycelial network, so we know the Discovery connection.
The other heart-shaped herbs exist in the mirror universe. No, to talk about all the women in Black Panther, though, I think this is the point I'd like to make about that is, and I talked a little bit earlier about the filmmaker's responsibility not just to tell a universal story, but also to speak perhaps to the African American community, and for sure, you know, in our community, there's a long-standing history of strong female role models and characters. You know, every black man is raised by a strong black woman, and there is no way I think you could market a movie to the black community without having strong black female characters in there. I think that's something that well, he just could not do it. But you know, again, to circle back to a previous discussion, I think that with there being so few stakes with whether or not T'Challa would live or die, we did not know whether or not the women would live or die. So everything they did had some deeper stakes, some deeper meaning to it, and it was good to see them stand on their own. It was good to know that the king could not do what he does without the support he had from the women in his life. And you know, had they given this movie a different name, say, you know, Wakanda, the movie, you would have thought it was about those women, because they were that strong, that involved, and not their stories weren't dependent on the men they were dating. And I kind of said a little bit earlier that to me there was a through line between Black Panther, Star Trek Discovery.
Gotta hear this.
And Steven Universe. And that has to do with it, just things in my head lately in the media about depictions of strong women in cartoons, movies, and TV. And in each of those shows, none of the women are the title character, but they are vital to the story. You know, I just got through as I know you guys know, doing a deep dive into Star Trek Discovery, which, upon reflection, was a story about women in charge. You know, ultimately, there were women who were in charge of the Federation, the Starship, and Empress or Empire or Emperor of the Mirror Universe. Steven Universe, although the title character is a guy, is really about the women in his life and how they direct him and support him and what they do. And maybe it's just on my mind lately because I've seen all those things recently. I'm impressed by some of the strong women characters I've gotten to see in each of those things from different
alien women.
Well, there you go. I mean, I suppose truly in Steven Universe, they're sort of asexual. They just chose a form, but still.
But they're coded as female. It totally counts. Yeah.
But good point. Brad's point about being part of the mycelial network kind of has a ring to it as well.
Well, they were the heart-shaped herb was totally glowing like blue and purple. Like at one point, I expected the tardigrade to like come lumbering out from the cave and like look around and then, you know, eat the herb.
Well, we've got to find out if the herb is really a mushroom. Then we'll know. But if I can set up some fan fiction right here, the slash meeting I want to see is Royal Guard versus the Amazons from Wonder Woman.
Yes.
But of course, in true comic book fashion, they fight, then they team up.
Oh,
and kick Dr. Doom and
right.
Lex Luthor's
So
ass.
you'd have to have like Thanos show up with the Infinity Gauntlet and like an evil sorcerer team up with him and put the two armies under a spell to fight each other instead of them. And then we'll have the first half of the movie being the epic battle. But then the crystal gems show up. And the magic from their gems undoes the magic of the sorcerer. But then Thanos uses his technology to block them behind a force field. But then Lieutenant Paul Stamets shows up, and he and Michael Burnham are able to break up the force field, and then they all kill Thanos. What do you think?
And Emperor Georgiou kills everybody.
There you go.
So my favorite thing about this particular thing, about that particular mashup, is if you did have the Amazons and you had the Royal Guard and you did the thing where they fight for a little bit and then they realize, they need to team up and they fight. I don't care who they fight, like whoever they go up against, my money is on all of those women because that is a powerful phalanx that you've pitted themselves up against. So yeah, that's the Infinity War movie. That's the Justice League 2 that probably isn't coming that I want to see. I want to basically see whoever the super big bag of the universe just kicked ass by a bunch of amazing women, while Captain America sits on the sideline and is like, cool.
There you go. All right. Well, guys, we are going to go ahead and move to wrap this thing up. It's been a great discussion, but it is late. So let's tie a pretty bow on things with some plugs. Steve, I would love for you to go first. Of course, plugs is the part of the show where you get to let our listeners know anything interesting that you love, you think they should check out. One, if you could tell our listeners who may happen to be in the Sacramento area how they could connect with the Sac Movie Bears, that would be awesome. But if you have another plug as well, go for it.
Absolutely. Well, just to start off with, I don't want to leave before saying I love it every time you guys have me. I think it's been a half dozen times, 5 or 6 times, usually substituting for Will, who is not really there. That's just green screen. But summertime was so much fun. I even appreciate that you guys have indulged me a couple of times. I've asked to come on specifically for this movie and again for Get Out because I had stuff to say and I said, please, I will be there. And you guys were nice enough to indulge me here, going off on rants and it's just so much fun. The Sacramento Movie Bears is on a bit of a hiatus. Our Facebook group still exists to talk about and discuss movies. As always, we'll regroup for more movies later, perhaps in the spring or summer. But if I may hawk this for a minute, if you have been watching or just finished Star Trek Discovery, please come join my it's actually a closed group. It's the Big Gay Spoilerific Star Trek Discovery discussion group where all spoilers are fair game. We get to
I love that
about
group.
the show.
Mm-hmm. So good.
You may need to send me a request for the link because it's the closed group, or you may be able to search for it. But it's the I can't remember the name of it. The Big Gay Spoilerific Star Trek Discovery discussion group. We have some fun there, and I can't wait till next season. So, and also can't wait for the reemergence of Movie Bears TV when we can talk about Star Trek Discovery.
Yes, that would be awesome.
That sounds like an episode we'll have to do sometime soon.
I think we're gonna, Steve, now that the season is over, maybe we kind of like we did a Steven Universe special. Maybe we need to do a Star Trek Discovery special. We'll have you back, and we'll just have one big giant disco day. What do you think?
Absolutely. Though I may come back as my mirror self, which might mean
yes,
me without a beard. That would be weird.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no goatees.
But lots of fetish gear because they wear lots of great fetish gear in the music.
That's right.
And being an asshole to everybody. Don't forget that part.
That's right. I'll be wearing lots of leather, and you will call me sir in the mirror universe.
So where's the mirror universe at again?
How dare you talk to your sir in such fashion?
The portal's in the back room at the Eagle.
Oh my gosh! Right. So if you guys are not watching Star Trek Discovery, and apparently it is a leather fetish dream. So tune in now. It's worth watching.
Let's have a transporter accident, Steve, in my pants. Anyway. Oh goodness! All right,
talk about a spore drive.
I know. All those spores everywhere.
Oh goodness! Prepare to jump. All right, so Jim, let's move on to you. What have you got this week?
We talked last week about a movie that was released on Netflix called The Cloverfield Paradox, and I'm going to talk about another movie that's available on Netflix. Didn't get near as much attention because it wasn't advertised during the Super Bowl and dropped right after the Super Bowl. But this movie's called The Ritual. It's a little kind of let's just say suspense horror movie set in. It's a UK film. It's not subtitled or anything. Starring Rafe Spall, who I really like. And it's about this bunch of friends They're old college buddies, but they're now like, I don't know, in their 30s, early 40s. And they decide to take like a reunion trip, a camping trip into the forest. And it's kind of like, The Hangover meets The Witch or Blair Witch Project without the comedy. This is a straight up like horror movie that's really pretty damn good, and it's not getting hardly any attention, but it's a pretty good, creepy, haunted woods / monster ? Movie. And I think it's worth your time. If you have Netflix, check it out. It's called The Ritual.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Will, how about you?
Yeah, for me, the thing that I would like to plug is, so over the course of the last week, I've been getting ready for the Oscars. And so I've watched all of the short films that have been nominated for all of the categories, because some of the theaters are doing these short film blocks, like where you just go and you watch all of the Oscar nominated animated films and all of the documentary and all.
We're going tomorrow night.
So of the different ones, the one that I would like to plug is the narrative feature category. The animated ones were a little weaker than I was expecting. They're fine, but they're just, nothing that really excited me. And the documentary ones are very long and very, very serious, which I'm fine with, but it's not for all audiences. But the narrative category, there are, live action is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There are 4 dramas, 1 comedy, all of which I absolutely love, to the point where I'm thinking like, man, which one of these is going to get the Oscar? I literally don't care. Of those 5, any one of them could get it, and I would be like, yeah, that was the right choice. So if you get a chance to watch them, check out the live action shorts category. Check out all of them. Shorts are underrepresented, and people don't talk about them enough. And it's a solid art form, but especially the live action shorts. There's really a lot to offer there.
I agree. Shorts are a great art form. I don't understand why people don't like cargo shorts though anymore. They're so versatile, yet there's a war against them. Oh, that's not what you meant. Sorry.
Well, you know what the Fab Five think about shorts and tees. So.
Speaking of which, I couldn't ask for a better segue into my plug for this week. Technically, I guess it's TV, but what the fuck? It counts anyway. The new Queer Eye, Netflix produced. The reboot of what was once Queer Eye for the Straight Guy is now just Queer Eye, because it's not just for the straight folks. I saw it pop up on Netflix, and I didn't even know that they were like doing a new version of the show. And then I was like, ugh, it's probably going to be terrible. But then like all these people on Facebook were like, oh my God, Queer Eye's back. It's so good. It's making me bawl. And that's how I knew that it was time to check out the show. So sure enough, pulled it up. First episode, I cried like 4 times. So great seeing the new Fab Five come in, including one of my favorite guys, Jonathan from Game of Thrones. That dude is so fucking funny. Also, Anthony, who I have a total crush on. It's not often I go for someone like his body type, but holy Jesus, he's like a gay Christian Grey in a good way. But it's just so great to see them come in and work with these guys who basically feel like the world has given up on them, or they're not good enough to be out in the world. They don't necessarily put a lot of thought into how they take care of themselves. And you can see that reflected in like the space that they live in and how they dress. And, the Fab Five comes in and they're not advocating these big, huge, crazy changes, just little things. And it's not even about how the guy looks at the end of the episode. Oh, gay makeover, whatever.
No haircut.
It's more about the new confidence that they have in themselves. Like, you see them standing up straighter. You see them being more open and talking more about their emotions and just letting themselves be themselves. And I think it's so cool to have 5 gay guys come in and create these transformative experiences. So believe it or not, the show also deals with some things that are going on, in the world lately, especially in regards to things like police brutality, believe it or not, a show about 5 gay guys doing makeovers. And that's where some of those powerful stuff in the show comes from. So whether you watch the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy show, or this just sounds like something that might be fun, you know, if you're in between shows and you need a quick 8-episode show that you can get into, definitely check out Queer Eye on Netflix.
Yeah, Brad, one quick thing I want to say about the show that's kind of surprised me was how much the show is also about these other things. Yes, it focuses on the guys coming in and kind of giving somebody and kind of a new lease on life, a new look, whatever. But it's also folding in a lot of like acceptance of gay acceptance. A lot of the subjects on the show are not your typical people that you would think like they go into a fire station and they get in with the firemen guys. And one guy's a devout Christian guy with, and raising his family.
There's a Trump supporter, a great Trump hat supporter that they make over,
and a really hot Trump supporter at that. Jeez.
Yeah. Some cool stuff around gay acceptance, and not just acceptance, but kind of embracing it and kind of turning people's attitudes around.
The episodes will absolutely make you cry. Especially the first episode, that was a really great one to lead with. They picked a great subject. It's very sweet. It's very wonderful what they do. And the Fab Five themselves, they picked a good cast. I remember the original cast I liked, but there were maybe 2 or 3 of them that I thought were really bringing a lot to the show, and the other 2 were also there, which is fine. It's hard to nail down a 5-person cast. With this one, there's one that I think is the weaker link. I think the other 4, though, are all just absolute rock stars. And even the one that I think is the weaker link is only by comparison. It's not I actively have a problem with the person. So, it's totally worth watching. It's a good pick.
Well, I haven't watched this yet. Hey, Brad, tell me this. Have they, at least in this new version, stopped shaving all the beards off the straight guys? That was my pet peeve with the original show.
Yes, they absolutely have. Sometimes they
will shaving their beards.
Sometimes they will trim them. Thank goodness, because they are crazy.
Wash them too. Wash them.
And they'll get the food out of them and get them to stop using their beards as napkins. But they don't make them shave them off.
I think
by the way,
of all the guys, I think only one of them that had facial hair, they actually actively get rid, clean shave the person. The other ones, it might be taking I've got beard out to here to beard down to here, or I've got beard to here to more of a kind of Brad type beard, a little closer to the skin. It does definitely bring some things down, but it's not actively destroying these this facial hair. It's just making it work for their facial frames.
And by the way, can I speak for all of the Movie Bear audience when I say, Brad, we're loving the beard. We like the way it's coming along. Hey, a shout out to Brad's beard. Everybody out there in the audience, please.
Well, thank you.
Letters and messages directly to Brad. Tell him what you love his beard, and it should never go away.
Steve, you're making me blush, but you can't see it that much because I bought a green stick that the Queer Eye guys recommended to tone down the red in my face. But I'm totally blushing underneath it. I promise. Thank you.
Cheers to Brad's beard.
Oh, you're
seconded.
Well, Steve, it has been so much fun having you back on the show with us. I'm already looking forward to our special Discovery episode. We'll be in touch and we'll get that planned. But Steve, if there's ever any film, a new Maze Runner film came out recently. We didn't hear from you. So I don't know if you lost interest in the franchise, but
did you see it?
I think in the tradition of my appearances on Movie Bears podcast, we have to find the crappiest film released, and then I'll come on and give my opinion about it.
And I will conveniently be at a film festival that week.
Well, it certainly wasn't Black Panther this week. Absolutely a joy having you with us to talk about it, Steve. Jim, Will, great discussion as always. Big shout out to our friends in the live chat. We had some other folks sneak in, William Durr and some of the other folks that came in kind of toward the end. Great having you guys with us as well. I know we didn't get to many of the comments because the conversation was so fast and furious here, but Adored hanging out with you guys. Also, Ben A. Steve, he says your glasses are super cute. I'm going to focus the camera on you for just a second. Look at those super ultra modern hip cutie patootie glasses on you, Steve.
But with these glasses, and if my beard was a little bit longer, I could actually make microbrew artisanal beard in Midtown.
Please do.
Has a little more beard.
Please do. You're speaking my language.
Oh, goodness. Well, there you go.
It'll be so thick it's chewy.
Well, guys, real fast, lightning round. How can people find you online? Steve, if they want to chat movies with you, how can they locate you?
Sacramento Movie Bears or Big Gay Spoilerific Star Trek Discovery Discussion Group or I sort of go by E.G. Bubba on Facebook. You can find me linked to Brad or Jim or Will in there somewhere. I don't know how you can find me, but
we'll make sure they do, Steve.
Google me.
All right, sounds good. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, find me on Twitter at JJP Out West, all one word. And I'm Jim Pugliafico on Facebook. Find me there.
All right, Will.
All right, you can find me on Twitter at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook. Look for William Lindis. Make sure it's William Lindis and not some abbreviation of it, because then you'll get a completely different person. Send me a message first, though. I'd like to know who's adding me. You can also find me on Letterboxd. Just look for William Lindis and give me an ad there. I rate and review every film that I've seen for the last 6-7 years now, all on that site. So come give it a check out.
All right, excellent. You can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. You can also add me on Facebook, which a lot of people have been doing recently. So that's been fun. Like, I start getting friend requests from all these hunky guys, and I'm like, he's so hot, he's got to be a bot. And then he's like, oh my gosh, I really loved your review of Doctor Strange from a year ago. And I'm like, you're listening to episodes from a year ago. I love you. Also, you're really hot. So feel free. Add me on Facebook, but send a message first as well. That would be great. Guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you've been listening in iTunes, we would love it if you would give us a review in iTunes. Go ahead, rate the show. That helps new people to find the show. You can also enjoy our past episodes on Stitcher Radio, as well as on our website, moviebearspodcast.com. We're also getting a theme song, you guys. It's going to be ready for the next episode. What? Believe it or not, we've commissioned a very awesome musician to do a short 30-second theme song for the show. So we are excited to debut that in our
None of us have heard it yet.
So. We haven't heard it yet.
But we're still excited. This is going to be cool.
We may use it once, and if it doesn't land, that's okay. We're taking a risk, but very, very excited for that. We'll have some details for you on the artist behind that theme song, as well as you being able to hear it next week. So stay tuned for that. We're pumped. It has been a pleasure. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Wakanda forever.
Bye-bye.